February 1943. Ottawa. Snow presses against the windows of a nondescript government building on Wellington Street. Inside, cigarette smoke hangs in the air. A young woman hunches over a desk cluttered with graph paper and intercepted German transmissions. Her pencil moves with practiced precision across columns of seemingly random letters. 2,000 miles east, beneath the grey swells of the North Atlantic, a German U-boat commander dictates his patrol report into the Enigma machine. Position. Fuel status. Convoy intercept coordinates. He transmits with absolute confidence. Berlin has guaranteed the cipher is unbreakable. Within hours, his exact words will sit decoded on a desk in the Canadian capital. The young cryptanalyst finishes her work. She stamps the document classified, passes it to her supervisor, and reaches for the next intercept. No celebration, no recognition, just the next message. For 30 years, her contribution would remain one of the war's most guarded secrets. The enemy never suspected. The public never knew. Most of the people doing this work would never speak about it for the rest of their lives. This is the story of how Canadian codebreakers helped turn the tide of the Atlantic War, without ever firing a shot. By the winter of 1942, the Battle of the Atlantic had become a grinding war of attrition, and the Allies were losing. German U-boats prowled the convoy routes between North America and Britain in devastating wolf packs. Admiral Karl Dönitz had perfected a lethal strategy: intercept Allied convoy schedules, concentrate multiple submarines along their predicted paths, and strike at night when surface escorts were least effective. This mattered because the Atlantic was Britain's lifeline. The numbers told a grim story. In 1942 alone, U-boats sent over 1,160 Allied merchant ships to the bottom, each one carrying food, fuel, or weapons Britain could not replace. Everything the island nation needed to survive crossed those waters. German torpedoes were bleeding that lifeline dry. Winston Churchill later admitted the U-boat threat was the only thing that truly frightened him during the war. At the heart of German naval success lay the Enigma machine. This electromechanical cipher device scrambled communications into what appeared to be random letter sequences. German cryptographers calculated it would take longer than the age of the universe to crack by brute force. The German Navy trusted it absolutely. This was the danger the Allies faced in 1942. U-boat commanders transmitted patrol reports, attack orders, and convoy sightings freely. They radioed position updates multiple times daily. Every transmission carried operational intelligence of immense value. If only the Allies could read it. Britain's codebreakers at Bletchley Park had achieved remarkable breakthroughs against German Army and Air Force Enigma traffic. But naval Enigma was different. The Kriegsmarine used more complex procedures and changed settings more frequently. In February 1942, they introduced a devastating upgrade: the 4-rotor Shark cipher for Atlantic U-boats. Overnight, the intelligence stream went dark. Allied codebreakers called it the blackout. Convoys sailed blind, while wolf packs gathered unseen. Bletchley Park was overwhelmed. The British had the expertise but lacked the manpower to process the staggering volume of intercepted traffic. Canada answered. Canada's entry into the code-breaking war began quietly in June 1941, when the government established the Examination Unit, an innocuously named organization housed within the National Research Council in Ottawa. The unit's origins were modest: a handful of rooms, borrowed equipment, and a skeleton staff. Its first director was Herbert Yardley, an American cryptanalyst with a controversial reputation but undeniable skill. When Yardley departed under pressure from British intelligence, the unit passed to more secure hands. Oliver Strachey, a veteran cryptanalyst from Bletchley Park, arrived to guide Canadian efforts into alignment with British methods. Under his mentorship, the Examination Unit developed from an amateur operation into a professional intelligence bureau. Personnel recruitment focused on unconventional talent. The unit sought mathematicians, linguists, musicians, and crossword enthusiasts, anyone whose mind worked in patterns. Gilbert de Beauregard Robinson, a mathematician from the University of Toronto, joined the effort. So did dozens of young women recruited from universities across the country, many with degrees in mathematics or modern languages. These women became the backbone of Canadian cryptanalysis. They worked long shifts, processing intercepts, identifying cribs, testing key hypotheses, and translating decoded German text. Most were in their early 20s. Many had never heard of Enigma before walking through the door. Few would ever receive public credit for what they accomplished. By 1943, the examination unit employed over 300 personnel, intercept stations across Canada, at Rockcliffe, Grand Prairie and other locations, captured German radio traffic from the North Atlantic. Raw intercepts flowed to Ottawa, where cryptanalysts attacked them with pencil, paper and tabulating machines borrowed from census operations. Canada did not work alone. The examination unit maintained close coordination with Bletchley Park, receiving daily intelligence summaries and technical guidance. Canadian Codebreakers also liaised with the U.S. Navy's OP-20G Signals Intelligence Division in Washington. The division of labor was practical. Bletchley Park retained primary responsibility for breaking the highest-level naval ciphers. Canadian units focused on processing decrypted traffic, analyzing patterns, and targeting secondary cipher systems, including German weather codes that provided invaluable cribs for attacking the main Enigma traffic. Across the Atlantic, the Royal Canadian Navy's Operational Intelligence Centre synthesized decoded intelligence with direction-finding bearings, patrol reports, and submarine sighting data. Canada's role was not to break Enigma single-handedly. It was to make the Allied system work at scale. Breaking Enigma required understanding why the machines seemed invincible. The naval Enigma contained interchangeable rotors, each wired internally to substitute letters in different patterns. A plug board swapped additional letter pairs. A reflector sent the signal back through the rotors a second time. The four-rotor variant, introduced for U-boat communications, added another layer of protection. Each day, German operators reset their machines according to monthly codebooks. Rotor order, ring settings, and plugboard connections all changed. Even identical plaintext encrypted on consecutive days produced completely different ciphertext. This mattered operationally because speed was everything. A convoy's position changed by the hour. Intelligence decrypted too late was intelligence wasted. Canadian cryptanalysts attacked through cribs, guessed fragments of plaintext that might appear in messages. Weather reports followed predictable formats. Patrol acknowledgements used standard phrases. If analysts correctly guessed a portion of the original text, they could work backward to deduce machine settings and unlock an entire day's traffic. Bletchley Park's bomb machines automated portions of this process. Canada lacked bombs, but contributed skilled analysts who processed decrypted traffic, identified patterns, and fed intelligence back into the system. Inside the examination unit, the atmosphere balanced intense pressure with numbing routine. Intercepts arrived in bundles from radio stations across the country. Clerks logged each message, noted its frequency and time of transmission, and routed it to the appropriate section. German naval traffic went to one team, Vichy French communications to another, Japanese diplomatic ciphers to a third. Cryptanalysts worked in shifts around the clock. A single day's delay in breaking a cipher might cost lives at sea. Decoded messages required translation. Many analysts read German fluently, then summarization into intelligence reports. These reports traveled through secure channels to naval headquarters, where staff officers integrated them into operational planning. The entire workflow remained invisible to the outside world. Families knew only that their daughters worked for the government. For the young women who staffed the examination unit, wartime cryptanalysis meant sacrifice without recognition. They signed the Official Secrets Act on their first day. Violation meant imprisonment. Most honored that oath for decades, even with parents, siblings, and spouses. A husband might never know his wife had helped win the Battle of the Atlantic. The work carried emotional weight. Analysts understood that lives depended on their accuracy. A mistranslated coordinate could send a convoy into danger. A missed message might allow a wolf pack to assemble undetected. Yet camaraderie developed in the shared secrecy. These women knew they were doing something important, even if the world never learned what. For many it was the most meaningful work of their lives. Work they could never discuss. Admiral Dönitz conducted periodic security reviews throughout the war. Each time his signals officers concluded that Allied convoy evasions resulted from improved radar, direction-finding equipment, or simple luck. The possibility that Enigma itself had been compromised seemed mathematically absurd. This confidence had consequences. U-boat commanders continued transmitting detailed reports multiple times daily, providing Allied intelligence with a steady stream of operational data. Had they suspected the truth, strict radio silence would have blinded codebreakers entirely. Canada, a nation German planners scarcely considered a military factor, never entered their calculations at all. Decoded intelligence flowed into the Operational Intelligence Center, where it merged with other sources to form a living map of the Atlantic battle. Staff officers plotted known U-boat positions based on decrypted patrol reports. They tracked fuel states to predict when submarines must return to base. They identified Wolfpack assembly points before the packs could strike. This intelligence allowed convoy routing officers to steer merchant ships away from danger. A convoy redirected 50 miles north might pass safely while a Wolfpack waited at its original track. The ships never knew how close they came. The crews never learned why they survived. The system worked because every component — interception, decryption, translation, analysis and dissemination — functioned together. Canadian codebreakers formed an essential link in that chain. March 1943 marked the Atlantic War's crisis point and the beginning of its turn. That month, Wolfpack savaged convoys SC-122 and HX-229 in the worst defeat of the entire campaign. 22 ships went down in 4 days. German commanders celebrated what seemed an imminent strangling of the Atlantic lifeline, but Allied intelligence capabilities were reaching maturity. The 4-rotor Shark cipher, which had blinded codebreakers for nearly a year, yielded to sustained cryptanalytic assault. Bletchley Park's new high-speed bombs cracked daily settings with increasing reliability. Decrypted traffic flowed again. Canadian contributions proved vital in exploiting this breakthrough. The examination unit processed secondary cipher traffic that provided cribs for main Enigma attacks. Canadian intercept stations captured U-boat transmissions that might otherwise have gone unheard. The Royal Canadian Navy's Intelligence Centre synthesized decrypts with direction-finding data to pinpoint submarine locations. By May 1943, the balance of the Atlantic War had changed. That month, Dönitz lost 41 U-boats, a catastrophic attrition rate. He withdrew his Wolfpacks from the North Atlantic convoy routes, admitting temporary defeat. Intelligence made the difference. Convoys routed around known submarine concentrations arrived intact. Hunter-killer groups moved toward U-boats whose positions were known from decrypted traffic. Aircraft appeared over submarines whose commanders believed themselves undetected. In the second half of 1943, Allied shipping losses dropped dramatically while U-boat casualties soared. Convoy after convoy reached Britain safely. Supplies accumulated. The invasion build-up for Normandy proceeded on schedule. Canadian codebreakers processed hundreds of decrypted messages monthly throughout this critical period. Each message represented a fragment of enemy intention, woven into the larger intelligence picture. No single decrypt won battles. The cumulative effect won campaigns. Yet this triumph remained invisible. Operational security demanded absolute silence about signals intelligence sources. Convoy commanders received routing instructions without explanation. Escort captains attacked submarines without knowing how headquarters knew where to send them. The secret held because it had to. Every life saved by intelligence would be paid back tenfold if Germany discovered the breach. German U-boat command grew increasingly frustrated, but never suspected the truth. Dönitz attributed his losses to Allied radar improvements and escort carrier deployments. His signals officers continued to certify Enigma secure. Transmissions continued unabated. The quiet Canadians in Ottawa kept reading every word. Through 1944, Canadian signals intelligence reached its fullest effectiveness. By this stage of the war, intelligence had become as decisive as firepower. The examination unit had grown into a disciplined operation employing nearly 400 personnel. Intercept stations stretched from the Atlantic coast to the prairies, capturing Axis communications across multiple frequencies. Analysts in Ottawa worked 3 shifts daily, processing traffic that fed directly into Allied operational planning. As D-Day approached, signals intelligence helped reduce uncertainty at sea at a moment when even small errors could have cost thousands of lives. Every scrap of information about German naval dispositions in the English Channel mattered. U-boat movements near invasion beaches posed a direct threat to landing forces. Canadian intercepts and analysis contributed to the broader intelligence effort that informed Allied commanders of enemy responses during those critical June days. This did not eliminate risk, but it reduced surprise. And in amphibious warfare, surprise was survival. The Normandy landings succeeded in part because planners understood where German submarines were likely to operate, and routed invasion shipping accordingly. In the Atlantic, the U-boat threat never fully disappeared, but it had been broken as a strategic force. German submarines continued sailing, continued transmitting, and continued dying. By war's end, the Kriegsmarine had lost 783 U-boats and over 28,000 submariners. Allied intelligence contributed to a significant portion of those losses. Admiral Dönitz went to his grave believing Enigma had remained secure. Post-war interrogations of German naval officers revealed the depth of their conviction. Captured commanders attributed their defeat to Allied technological superiority. Centimetric radar, ahead-throwing weapons, escort carriers. Some suspected methods to track submarine diesel exhaust or detect periscope wakes from aircraft. None suspected cryptanalysis. That misunderstanding shaped everything that followed. German signals experts conducted their own post-war analysis. Their conclusion? Enigma had performed as designed. Any security breaches must have resulted from human error or captured codebooks, not systematic code-breaking. The mathematical impossibility of breaking Enigma remained, in their minds, mathematical fact. This German certainty validated the discipline Allied codebreakers had maintained. The secrecy held. The deception endured. Thousands of sailors reached port because quiet analysts in Ottawa, Bletchley Park and Washington had done their work without recognition. May 1945 brought victory in Europe. In Ottawa, the examination unit wound down its German operations. Files were boxed. Equipment was secured. Personnel dispersed to civilian careers, carrying knowledge they could not share. For them, the war ended without a conclusion. There were no medals for code-breaking. No parades, no headlines celebrating the cipher war. The young women who had spent years over intercept sheets returned to ordinary lives. Teachers, mothers, librarians. Their service followed a different path, one that did not end in public ceremony. One of the most consequential intelligence successes Canada would ever achieve vanished into classified archives, locked away from public knowledge for another 3 decades. Peace brought no relief from secrecy. The Official Secrets Act bound every former member of the examination unit to permanent silence. Disclosure meant criminal prosecution. Most honored that oath, not from fear of punishment, but from ingrained habit. They had spent years treating their work as unspeakable. For many, secrecy became normal, simply another habit carried forward from wartime. Cold War realities reinforced the classification. Soviet signals intelligence posed new threats. Western code-breaking methods developed against Germany retained value against new adversaries. Revealing wartime techniques might compromise ongoing operations. The Canadian government quietly transformed wartime intelligence infrastructure into permanent institutions. The communications branch of the National Research Council evolved from the examination unit's remnants, eventually becoming the Communications Security Establishment. The work continued under new management against new enemies. Meanwhile, public histories of the Second World War told incomplete stories. Books celebrated the Royal Canadian Navy's convoy escorts. Films dramatized Atlantic battles between destroyers and submarines. Official histories acknowledged Canadian sacrifices at sea. None mentioned code-breaking. The examination unit did not appear in indexes. The people who had worked on German ciphers remained invisible. Veterans of conventional service shared war stories freely. They gathered at Legion halls, compared campaigns, mourned fallen comrades openly. Former cryptanalysts sat among them, saying nothing about their own contributions. Some found this difficult. Others accepted it as simply how things were. There was no sense of injustice, only difference. German naval memoirs added an unintended irony. Former U-boat commanders published accounts portraying themselves as warriors defeated by technological means. They praised Enigma's reliability. They attributed losses to radar and aircraft. They never suspected how thoroughly their communications had been read. The truth remained locked in government vaults. Decades passed. The cryptanalysts grew old. Some died without ever telling their families what they had done during the war. The silence gradually lifted in 1974. That year, Frederick Winterbottom published The Ultra Secret, the first authoritative account of Allied codebreaking during the Second World War. The British government had authorized limited disclosure. Winterbottom's book revealed to readers that the Allies had systematically broken German communications throughout the conflict. The revelation reshaped historical understanding of the war, but for those who had lived the silence, it came late in life. Scholars revisited campaigns with new information. The Battle of the Atlantic, long portrayed as a contest of ships and aircraft, emerged as equally a contest of minds and mathematics. Canadian contributions gradually entered the public record. Researchers uncovered the examination unit's role. Declassified documents revealed the scope of Ottawa's signals intelligence operation. Historians pieced together the story of Canadians, many of them women, who had fought the cipher war from cramped offices far from any battlefield. For surviving veterans, declassification brought quiet relief. Women who had kept silent for 30 years could finally tell their families. Husbands learned what their wives had actually done during the war. Children discovered their mothers had helped counter the U-boat threat. Grandchildren heard stories that had waited a lifetime to be told. "I always knew she did something important," one veteran's daughter recalled. "She just couldn't tell us what." Official recognition followed slowly. The Canadian government acknowledged the examination unit's contributions in historical publications. Veterans received certificates. Researchers conducted oral history interviews, preserving first-hand accounts before time claimed the last witnesses. The Communications Security Establishment eventually opened portions of its historical archives. Exhibits at the Canadian War Museum incorporated code-breaking narratives. Academic studies examined Canada's place in the Allied Intelligence Alliance, yet recognition remained modest compared to conventional military achievements. No major monuments honor Canadian codebreakers. No films dramatize their work. Their contribution is measured differently, in convoys that arrived safely, in sailors who came home, in losses that did not occur because someone in Ottawa solved the right puzzle at the right moment. Recognition arrived, but never fully closed the gap left by decades of silence. Recognition explained the past, it did not replace it. Today, only a handful of wartime cryptanalysts survive. Their generation passes into history. The documents remain. The record endures. Wars are won by more than soldiers. In the offices of wartime Ottawa, ordinary Canadians waged a campaign that saved lives without drawing blood. They held no weapons. They wore no uniforms. They faced no enemy fire. Yet their contribution to Allied victory was real and measurable. Information is power. Knowing where the enemy waits shapes wars as surely as weapons. The side that reads its opponent's communications holds an advantage courage alone cannot overcome. Canada's role in this hidden war reflected something familiar in the national character. Canadians have rarely sought glory. They do what needs doing, quietly and competently, without demanding recognition. The women and men of the examination unit embodied this completely. They accepted anonymity as the cost of service. They kept faith with secrecy when breaking silence might have brought them credit. Their legacy extends beyond the Second World War. Signals intelligence remains central to national defense. The quiet work of information continues, carried out by successors who operate in similar conditions. Perhaps the most honest tribute to the wartime cryptanalysts lies in a simple fact. Convoys reached Britain. Supplies flowed. The invasion launched. Germany fell. Somewhere in the Atlantic's depths, the rusting hulls of U-boats remain. Silent markers of a war partly won by Canadians who never left their desks. Their names are mostly forgotten now. Their work is not. If this story of Canadian codebreakers stayed with you, please take a moment to like this video. It helps Canadian Legacy continue sharing the lesser-known chapters of Canada's Second World War history, the intelligence work, the quiet service, and the contributions that went unrecognized for decades. Subscribe to Canadian Legacy to stay connected with these histories. Governments made decisions. Armies moved across maps. But in Ottawa, it was ordinary Canadians, many of them women, who carried part of the war's weight in pencil marks and cipher sheets. Their work deserves to be remembered. We'd like to hear from you. Leave a comment telling us where you're watching from. Our viewers reach from Newfoundland to New Zealand, Canadians honouring family service, and viewers worldwide who value careful history. If your family has a connection to Canada's wartime intelligence efforts, a name, a story passed down, consider sharing it in the comments. Watching, remembering, and sharing these stories helps preserve them. Thank you for watching. Thank you for remembering.